Today, we are talking about pricing and positioning for professional services firms. So if you have a professional services firm or you have an agency, you definitely want to listen in. My guest today is Tim Williams, and I'll tell you more about him in a second. So stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show. And you know, if you've listened before, I've had all kinds of great guests. I get to talk to smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies ranging from Netflix to Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation, Blizzard. You can check out our archives. And if you're interested more on the topic of pricing and positioning for professional services firms, check out some of my past archives. You want to look at Carl Smith, David C. Baker, Blair Enns, and Roger Herney. Those are all great episodes that I would recommend to you if you like this topic. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And you can go to Rise 25 or email us at support@rise25.com if you have any questions about that. All right, Tim, such a pleasure to have you here today. I know we've been working on setting this up for a while. First of all, you're the founder of Ignition Consulting Group, which is dedicated to assisting agencies and professional service firms worldwide in optimizing their value propositions. And you have been an international speaker. You've been an author. Your book, a couple of different books, but one is Positioning for Professionals, How Professional Services Firms Can Differentiate Their Way to Success. And you've appeared in New York Times. We were just talking about before the interview that you're in Axios recently, Wall Street Journal, you name it. Pleasure to have you here today. But I'd love to take everyone back to their childhood, because I feel like we learn a little bit about people in a different way by hearing about that. And a lot of people tell me they did lemonade stands or they did a newspaper route or something like that. Never before has someone told me I had a radio station when I was a child. We found that deep in the archives of the internet. And I want to hear, how did you start a radio station as a child?
Well, let me be clear. I had a fairly small audience. I wasn't able to monetize it like most radio stations, but I had a heck of a lot of fun. I scrounged up the equipment. My father was a bit of a stereo nut, and he happened to have, the old reel-to-reel recorder and the microphones. And so I just made friends with people who could help set me up, and I had a very limited little broadcast signal, but a lot of fun, and kind of set me on the path toward a career in media. Things related to publishing, music, broadcasting, all caught my interest at a very early age.
It's funny how these little things that are like little hints of what our future self is going to be like. For me, I volunteered at one point at my local community access TV station. I think I was like 12 or 13 years old, and they're like, whatever, kid, like you can do this. And like they had me behind a camera for like a town council meeting or something like that, one or two times. But still, like here we are. We're using video to communicate over the internet to create media many years later. And, it kind of just shows like what we're interested in. And clearly that was the case for you.
Definitely. I attempted to publish my own newspaper. I just created a little bit of an amateur media empire, to the extent I could, because I found that it just incorporated a lot of the things that interested me. So, as you say, here I am years later using all those skills.
Now, you were also really interested in music, and you actually monetize that in a sense, because you had a band that you played with some other kids. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah. Band all the way through high school and college, and started college as a music major thinking I wanted to be a film composer. And I, wrote for the college jazz band, and I thought, this is going to be a difficult way to make a living. I think there are about 10 successful film composers, and they all live in Southern California. So I wondered, was there another way I could use my interest again in music and related fields in a way that might help me support a family? And that's when I thought, advertising might be that path.
Yeah. So did you find that advertising, which you ended up working for Burson Marsteller and Ogilvy and a bunch of other agencies, but did you find that was like a creative outlet for you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, again, I was looking for a career in which I could use music and use, broadcasting and use those things that interested me as a kid, because they all come together in some small way. If you're in a business like advertising, you're able to work alongside those kinds of people.
Yeah. So it's funny because, now you are known as an expert in pricing, positioning. You're a big advocate of killing the billable hour. That in many ways, that's what drew me to the work that I'm doing now, because I was a practicing attorney for a lot of years, billing by the hour, and tried really hard to figure out a way to get out of it. And in part, I'm out of the practice of law entirely because I couldn't figure out a way to kill the billable hour in the work that I did. For you, where did that come along? At what point did you realize that we need to kill the billable hour?
Yeah. Well, I started my consulting business, Ignition Consulting Group, more than 20 years ago. In the first half of my consulting life, I worked with mostly agencies in helping them with their business strategy, their positioning strategy. It's a curious fact that firms that are in the business of helping their clients develop distinctive, relevant brands, they do such a poor job of doing that for their own brands. Mm-hmm. So that was the first half of my consulting life. But then I met a guy named Ron Baker, who just turned my world upside down when it comes to revenue models and pricing, because Ron had written a book called The Firm of the Future that argued that the billable hour was a wildly suboptimal way for professional firms to capture the value they create. And I thought that can't possibly work. That the idea of running a law firm or an ad agency without timesheets just seemed ludicrous to me. So I got to know Ron, and we hit it off instantly. He taught me alternate pricing methodologies, and I taught him the agency and marketing business. And together we paired up and did road shows for large groups of agencies, showing them a better way to run their businesses. And so from there on out, I started teaching pricing and revenue model transformation alongside the positioning work. And I find that, honestly, this is, you'd expect me to say this, but this is the most important question for professional firms today, is confronting the billable hour, because I'm going to boldly predict that within 10 years, there will be very, very few professional firms of any kind that are still billing by the hour, that are still doing timesheets. There are a lot of factors at play that are going to make that happen. The latest of which, that you and I talked about briefly before the show, artificial intelligence. Good luck billing that by the hour.
Yeah. I don't know how you would do that, or else it's going to be really kind of a race to the bottom, because people are just going to want to use a software or something like that.
Yeah.
First of all, before we get too deep into this topic, I'm kind of fascinated by people that, in your words, you found this book that you've kind of, I'm going to put words in your mouth, was life-changing to you.
Yeah.
And you end up starting a business with the guy who wrote the book.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, we didn't actually start a business. We collaborated. He has a consulting business, and I had a consulting business. Still amazing, right? That you admire someone from afar so much that you say, this book is such impactful on me, and then you reach out and you start collaborating with the guy. Yeah, well, I've got to give credit to one of the senior people at the American Association of Advertising Agencies, Tom Finneran, who was aware of Ron and his work, and he was aware of me and my work, and he said, these two guys need to meet one another, because if I can get these two guys to collaborate on this topic, we might be able to affect some real change in our industry. And as I said, that's when I taught Ron about the advertising business. He taught me about new approaches to pricing, and it was a total game changer. It brought me into a completely different network of people that I'd never met before in other professional services. We have a think tank called Verisage, and Verisage is composed of other consultants like me who work in all the professions. So law, architecture, accounting, IT consulting. And so together we're on a mission to bury the billable hour in professional services, and we're all tackling it from the point of view of the industries that we personally know best. So yeah, I would say it was a remark. It wasn't a coincidence. I mean, it was kind of orchestrated by someone we both knew, but definitely changed my career path. Definitely.
I'm curious what led you down that path, because you had been president of R&R Partners, the 5 office advertising agencies in the top 60 in the U.S., which actually was responsible for developing the What Happens Here Stays Here campaign for Las Vegas, which who hasn't heard of that? You've seen it everywhere. The massive success. So it's not often that you see someone leaving, to pursue something completely different when they've had that level of success.
Well, it wasn't so different. I mean, it was still, I've spent my entire career in the advertising agency business in some form, either working in agencies or having agencies as clients. So what I do now, the vast majority of my clients are still ad agencies. They're kind of all over the world, but I've got a kind of a academic streak, and my older siblings are all college professors and PhDs, and I had always wanted to write and teach, write a book, and so I thought, I was still pretty young as consultants go, in my late 40s. I thought, I want to give this a go, writing, speaking, teaching, and I decided to focus my business exclusively in the area that I felt that I knew best, and I think that helped me, but.
Yeah.
So I've been in the same line of business. In fact, sometimes I feel like because I work so closely with the principals of agencies, I feel like I've never left the business. I still walk in, I'm still inside agencies every day of my life, either physically or virtually.
Yeah, it's funny because I say something similar. People ask me about leaving the practice of law. I feel like I still advise businesses, but I just advise them in a different way.
That's right.
And fortunately, I don't bill by the hour anymore, or else I probably would have put a bullet through my head by now, because it's absolutely insane. Just it drives you nuts.
Yeah.
I want to get back to what you mentioned about AI, but before we do that, there's something big that happened, as we record this now in August of 2023, about 3.5 years ago now, which was the pandemic. Let's talk a little bit about how that affected professional services firms before we get to AI.
Sure. Well, I can tell you how it affected me, and I think most consultancies. I had spent my life on airplanes prior to that, every day of my week, traveling somewhere in the world. Because what I do is so specialized. My market is global. It's not, I don't have a single client in my time zone. It's all somewhere else. So it tested the question, and I'm sure you've talked many times with your guests about this. It tested the question: Can you run a business like this successfully virtually? Do you really have to be there? And of course, we've all proven, yep, we can work very effectively virtually. And now the vast majority of the firms that I work with have hybrid work environments. I was just on a Zoom call this morning with a firm their headquarters are in London, but of course we had people from other parts of the world, I would say most of them working from home. You look at the background, you can see their kitchen, you can see their bedroom,
right?
A few people at the office.
Isn't it funny how that used to be verboten?
Yeah.
And now it's like people walking around. It could be a washing machine, but it doesn't matter, right?
A dog in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
All
par for the course now.
So that's all acceptable.
Yeah.
They have policies, most of them, that they want their people to come in the office generally 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah. But otherwise they can work, they can work wherever they want, as long as they do their jobs well, as long as they produce the outcomes that they're expected to.
Right. Now, I imagine you have clients that come to you that are stuck deep in the billable hour and can't even imagine, maybe they're unhappy with it, but they can't even imagine how to get out of it. Yeah. And they have, I'm sure a series of questions about that sort of thing. Where do they usually start? Where are they most stuck when you have that conversation with them?
Well, I was one of them. by the way. When I first met Ron, I thought this
Me
guy's
too, right?
yeah, I thought this guy's crazy. He obviously doesn't understand the agency business, because we could never survive without time.
Right. That might work for them.
Yeah,
not for
that
me,
works for
right?
everybody. And then all the objections, which I've now heard a million times, that works if you're a larger firm. We're too small. Or that works if you're in the East Coast. We're in
non-Paducah, Kentucky, or
that
whatever,
works.
right? Yeah.
All of these reasons why it won't work for you. But the central, the central thing, that the light that goes off inside the heads of professionals when it comes to the billable hour is when you show them, or when you just point out, you know what, the rest, we are alone in this archaic industrial age revenue model. The rest of the business world has all sorts of interesting, innovative, creative ways they price their products and services, none of which are billed based on billable time. Steve Jobs never did a timesheet, and he built a pretty successful business.
Mm-hmm.
None of your clients do timesheets, and they run successful businesses. And that is usually pretty provocative. Like, well, that's true. None of our clients do timesheets. So how do they run their companies? How do they run their businesses? How do they measure, forecast resources, and measure profitability? I say, yeah, exactly. That is all doable in professional firms. Let's just step back and adopt modern pricing methodologies. It's not anything revolutionary. It is simply catching up with the rest of the business world. And that's usually that's when people kind of understand, yeah, okay, if the rest of the business world can do it, I guess we can. Show us how.
Yeah. So I imagine it does at times require to rethink, okay, what is the ultimate result we're striving to achieve for the client? What do they want from us? How do we break that down into different components and maybe price it based on deliverables, or price it based on achievements?
Yeah, that is exactly right. That is the first essential step. We're trying to move firms away from selling inputs, which are hours, time of staff, efforts, activities, to at least selling outputs, which, as you just said, are deliverables, actual work product, and in some cases an outcome. So yes, you can be paid by results if you've got the right kind of client under the right circumstances, but that's only going to be 10% of your revenue over time. Mostly you're going to be moving to models where you're going to be paid for the actual work itself, not the time that goes into it, the actual work product itself.
And I'm kind of drawn to this. You have 130,000 followers on LinkedIn. You've written books, you've spoken extensively, stuff like that, creating content, and which is kind of the new currency of the internet. Companies need to do that. But I've noticed that professional services firms that are stuck in the billable hour really struggle with the idea of creating content, because
it's not
time
billable.
is money. Yeah, it's not billable, right?
Yeah.
When you remove yourself from that, then it kind of frees you up, and you notice that companies, firms are more likely to create content, which then fuels their growth. Is that a fair connection?
Yeah, I've never heard anyone make that observation before, John. That's smart. Yeah, right. We feel constrained in all sorts of ways. That's why there's such a lack of proactive behavior inside professional firms. The chief complaint among clients about agencies is, well, they're very reactive. They do what we ask. They work hard, but they're not proactive. They don't do anything that we didn't request. They don't give us ideas we didn't ask for. And why is that? Well, I mean, you just said it. It's not billable. So therefore, when you remove this idea that time is money, and that I actually strongly believe, and economists would agree, time is not money. Time does not represent a cost. Time is a constraint. Office space is cost. Paper clips are a cost. But time is simply a constraint. It doesn't directly represent a cost. We run a pretty simple business in professional services. We don't have complicated inventories and warehouses and things like that. We're a fixed cost business, and it's a simple business.
Yeah.
we teach you the idea you don't need time either to price for your external client facing reasons, and you don't need it internally for operations. You can still forecast and allocate resources without timesheets.
Let's also talk about specialization. A big challenge for a lot of professional services firms and agencies is how much to niche down and whether it's a good idea for them. Frequently, one of the objections is that, well, I don't want to miss out on opportunities. Why would I turn away someone who's willing to pay me business? Let's talk about that for a little bit and what you advise.
Well, that's the essential first question, and of any business, professional services or not. And there are so many consulting engagements that begin with an organization coming to us describing their problems, which they believe have to do with structure or organization or operations. And in the first 10 minutes of doing some discovery work, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, we discover, no, actually, it's a positioning problem. You don't have a business strategy. You're attempting to be all things to all people. The most hated term in the professional service lexicon for me is full service, right? There's a meaningless term if there ever was one.
Right.
What does that mean? Do you mean as opposed to like half service or partial service?
Right.
No firm can ever possibly be full service. And yet they use and abuse that term all the time. If you ask ChatGPT to write a positioning strategy for a law firm, which I've done, and it's interesting, it will spit back the quintessential, predictable.
Yeah.
We are a full service integrated firm serving a wide variety of clients in multiple industries. It's just the same stuff that is in effect. It's the absence of a strategy, right?
Yeah. And
Go
ahead. Well, I was going to say that one of the first law firms that I worked for when I was practicing law was kind of one of these it was a tiny little firm, but it was quote unquote a full service firm in the sense that they wouldn't turn away anything. Anything came through the door and take it. But as a result, they wouldn't get referrals for anything because they didn't define themselves as anything. And they also didn't take the currency of business coming in the door that wasn't a good fit for them and then refer it out to other referral partners, which is great currency, at least in the world of law. Yeah. Your thoughts on that and how it affects referrals?
Well, yeah, I mean, the essential argument for positioning is to step back and ask the question, what is it that clients really buy from you? What is it they buy? They don't buy time. You might sell time, but they don't buy time. What do they buy? They buy expertise. Mm-hmm. And you can be expert in something, you just can't be expert in everything. So when you attempt to spread yourself through so many different industries, you lose credibility. Clients are looking for somebody with an ability to solve problems in their business, in their sector. And the deeper you go, the more you become a brand in demand. The more and that impacts referrals, right? You've mentioned a few names, David Baker, Blair Enns, are people that we refer business back and forth all the time. We run very specialized businesses, but the question about expertise is the first essential question. If you're starting a law firm or you're thinking about your business strategy for the coming year, you can be world class in something, even no matter where you are. And think about the market for a generalist, like a family doctor. Where do they draw their market? From their own zip code. Mm-hmm. What's the market for a pediatric neurosurgeon?
Worldwide. Yeah.
See how this works? That's another light bulb moment for professionals. They say, oh, I see. So if I want national clients and national business, and I want prospects who will get on a plane and travel 2,000 miles to do business with me, the way I do that is by becoming a specialist, not a generalist.
So let me ask you this, because I imagine you're getting this from your clients now. where does that leave us if we're in a world where now more than ever with AI, with ChatGPT, expertise is a click away, and really in-depth thought through expertise?
Yes, but experience, as you know, which is a dimension of expertise. Experience is the wisdom and the insight that comes from. I imagine AI will be able to claim this at sometime fairly soon, but the experience that comes from a professional who spent their career being briefed by a client and being able to step back and think, you know what, I've seen this problem before. I've seen this before. And I've seen it with these dynamics and these dimensions. And that's something that AI doesn't really have the context to see a business problem the same way a human being would at this point. I think that's our ace in the hole for now, but no doubt, AI is going to change the nature of the professional services world in a very big way.
And on the flip side of that, I imagine you're saying to these professional services firms that they need to be studying how they can leverage AI in order to do the work that they do faster and less expensively.
Yeah, and the best ones already are. The best ones are identifying I make this distinction that we are in two businesses. We're in the magic business and the logic business. Magic is the ideation, problem solving, innovation that comes with expertise and experience. Logic is the daily, filing, writing briefs, filing, writing a press release if you're a PR firm, producing ads if you're an ad agency. So the kinds of widely available, repeatable services, that's logic. Well, AI is perfectly suited for that. Go ahead and turn AI loose let them write your emails and your press releases and do that. And most firms already are engaged in using AI for those kinds of things. On the magic side, even that, you've read all the articles about generating visuals, writing music, developing scripts. That's pretty scary. And there are plenty of reasons why AI isn't quite as good at that as humans yet. But certainly, turn AI loose on logic now. No argument against that. Magic, that'll come. That'll be a line that keeps constantly moving.
Yeah, I've never heard of it that way, magic and logic. That's such a great way of kind of combining the alchemy that you need to combine together. We haven't talked as much, or at least not expressly, about kind of brand building. And I know that's a key component of what you do. Where are we left and have things changed at all in a world where we have AI in terms of firms defining their brand? Has that affected branding in any way?
I think so. I think that you have to look at that question in a slightly broader context, that we live in an over-communicated society where we're submerged with messages. What's happened is that we grew up in a society and in a marketplace where there were limited communication channels. And they were regulated for the most part. With the birth of the internet, we now live in a marketplace with an unlimited supply of media channels, right? There are hundreds of thousands of new media channels being created every single day. So that is what has changed the nature of branding more than anything, is that we're swimming in options for how we get our message out there, and consumers are more and more fragmented. It's more and more different. We're more and more resistant to any kind of commercial messages. We pay premium for premium subscriptions that filter out the advertising, and so it's made the job of most advertising professionals much harder. Much harder.
Yeah, I mean, I often say that every business can be its own media channel these days.
Exactly
It
right.
really needs to be in many ways. Well, this has been great. I want to wrap things up with my question, or I call my gratitude question. I'm a big fan of expressing gratitude, especially to those who've helped you along the way. Who would you thank? Who, peers, contemporaries? Who would you want to acknowledge?
Well, I'll answer that with a quick story. I went to New York thinking, when I was a young, just graduated from college, thinking if I want to get serious about a career in advertising, I'm going to move to New York City. I'm going to do the Madison Avenue thing. I interviewed with several multinational agencies. I had offers from 3 of them, and I really did not know what to do. I was walking down the street one afternoon, and one of the people who interviewed me at one of the firms, Marsteller, happened to be walking down Third Avenue, caught my eye, and he walked over to me and he said, "Tim," he remembered my name. He said, "We really want you to come and work for us. We think you'd be a great fit for us." His name was Ted French. He persuaded me, he hired me, and he became a mentor with whom I retained a relationship till his dying day, which is just a few years ago. He attended my daughter's wedding. He came out and vacationed with our family. I only worked for him for 4 years, but his impact on my life, because he took me under his wing and taught me so much and was such a role model for me, that I stayed in touch with him my entire professional life.
You got a good pattern of taking those people that you admire and then building a lifelong relationship or a collaboration with them.
I believe in it. I just learned so much from so many people.
Yeah. All right. I lied. I have one more final question. Favorite film composer? Are you a John Williams guy? You a Danny Elfman guy?
Wow. Well, that's a pretty good question. I think I'm going to have to say Elmer Bernstein. If you know the score to Magnificent Seven, he wrote a lot of the iconic Western film scores, but that's a really tough question. Howard Shore would be in there. Who doesn't like John Williams? Yep.
Yeah. Amazing body of work. Tim, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you? Obviously, LinkedIn is one place, Ignition Consulting Group. Where else can people go in your book?
Yeah, ignitiongroup.com. And there you can sign up for our newsletter, and you'll find links to the book. LinkedIn, I really enjoy writing for LinkedIn, so that's a good resource as well. And I love to network, so love to hear from anyone that feels like they'd like to be part of my network.
Great, Tim. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.